Hello and welcome to Facebook Live. My name is Darlene Merkler. I'm with Inland Caregiver Resource Center. We're a not-for-profit organization that helps family caregivers and seniors over 60. Our services are free and there are no income qualifications. So if you know someone who could benefit from our services, please give us a call at 1-800-675-6694. I'm here on Facebook Live on Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon with 15-minute tips for family caregivers. And this week, I've been talking about sundowning. You probably have heard that term before. And if you're caring for someone who has Alzheimer's disease, you may have noticed the behaviors that I'm going to talk about today in your loved one. About 1 out of 5 people who have Alzheimer's exhibit the behaviors of sundowning that I'm going to talk about today. Doctors aren't really sure what causes this syndrome, but scientists think that changes in the brain of someone with dementia might affect their inner body clock. And that's the area of the brain that tells you when to wake up and when to go to sleep. And with people with different forms of dementia, and especially Alzheimer's disease, may be very affected by that. And we're going to talk about sleep as one of the symptoms today. So there's 15 symptoms, and the first one is distorted reality. That one is most common, especially in the latter stages of the disease. And this is when the person may not realize how old they are. And they may think that they're headed to their junior prom, or that they're back in kindergarten, or maybe they think they're giving birth to one of their children, their young mother. So forcing the person back into our own realities is futile, because that's just going to make the person more agitated. The best thing you can do is just to go along with whatever they're saying. If they say they're at their junior prom, ask them questions about it. If they say they have a new baby, ask questions about the baby. And one of the very first things I ever learned when I started working in Alzheimer's care, I've worked in Alzheimer's assisted living for many years, is we cannot bring the person with Alzheimer's into our world. We must go into their world. And that helped me a lot to be able to communicate and understand people with Alzheimer's disease. Another symptom is restlessness. And this may cause people, this is the sleep pattern that we were talking about earlier, this may cause people to wake up during the night and wander around the house and maybe even go outside, which could be pretty unsafe. The thing that we want to remember is if your loved one is getting up at night, apparently their inner clock is switched around, we want to make sure that someone is monitoring them so that they don't fall or go outside or eat something that they're not supposed to, things like that. We had patients at the Alzheimer's assisted living where I worked that were up all night and slept all day, so their internal clock was completely switched around. Another symptom is yelling, and even though the person may be speaking very loudly, they're not necessarily yelling at you or upset with you. It just may be where they are in their distorted state at that time, and so they're speaking very loudly. And it's hard for us as caregivers not to take that personally, but it's not always necessarily that they're angry or upset with you. Another symptom is irritability. This you may notice particularly when the sundowning first starts, and usually it's when the sun starts to go down, which is where it got its name. And so sometimes 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, you may notice your loved one becoming more irritable. So this is the time that obviously you don't want to have any conversations about anything important. Maybe have those conversations earlier in the day and try to accommodate your loved one and calm them down as much as you can. Another symptom is being suspicious. The person that you are taking care of, it might be your spouse, it might be your parent, but all of a sudden they are very suspicious of you. What you're saying, what are your motives, and they might even think you're an imposter and not recognize who you are. And this can come and go. Like one minute they may know who you are and you're having a conversation. The next minute it's like, who are you and why are you in my house? So this is, it's important also in this symptom to comply with your loved one. Whatever they are saying, just go along with them. Hallucinations can happen also during sundowning, and this can be triggered by bright lights. Also, if you have wallpaper with a lot of small print in it, it can also trigger hallucinations. So we want to be careful of that because it's very real for the person. Also, confusion is a common symptom of sundowning syndrome. Just imagine how confused you'd be if you only had bits and pieces of your memory. And sometimes the person with Alzheimer's disease forgets who you are. They might even forget who they are or where they are. And this can sometimes make them feel very panicky or fearful and upset. So we want to acknowledge what they're feeling and help them be comfortable. Mood swings is another symptom with for those with sundowning. It's difficult to regulate your mood when you have no sense of logic or memory. Think about it as being drunk, sedated, and suffering from amnesia. That's what the person is dealing with. That would be pretty overwhelming. Also, fear. Seniors that are suffering the effects of sundowning syndrome experience frustration and disorientation, and especially when it starts to get dark at the end of the day. And so we want to be there to reassure the person and comfort them. Anxiety, and anxiety is not the same thing as stress. When your boss gives you a report and says this is due at the end of the day, that makes us stressful. But anxiety is something that sometimes people with memory loss live with day in and day out. And so that's got to be very difficult for them. Depression is another symptom, and especially in the early stages, I've often said depression and dementia, the early stages of dementia, look very similar. The person starts to withdraw, they don't want to go out of the house, they don't want to communicate, and that's just what happens when you're depressed too. So if the depression is treated, it almost appears as though the dementia is getting better, but it's really the depression symptoms that are being depressed. And sometimes it's hard to differentiate, but if you think your loved one is depressed, it would be good to mention it to your doctor. Pacing and wandering is very common also. And this we need to monitor because sometimes people just want to walk and walk and walk. They don't even want to sit down and have a meal. They don't want to hydrate. This can be a fall risk. Of course, they can get lost also. I did want to mention that the Alzheimer's Association has a program called Safe Return. It's a national registry. You can go to their website at alz.org and you can purchase for, I think it's like $70 a year, and you can either get a necklace, a bracelet, or an ankle bracelet that identifies the person with memory loss to you. And so I had an incident in one of my classes one time. The lady's husband had driven from California to Virginia, and then he suddenly didn't know where he was or why he was there. And luckily, he had the bracelet, and they were able to contact her, and she flew out and then drove the car back. So even if your loved one's not exhibiting signs of pacing and wandering, that symptom can come on very quickly and unexpectedly. So you may want to think about getting one of those bracelets. Also, fatigue, especially if your loved one does like to pace and wander a lot during the day, and then later in the evening, they may be very fatigued. And the fatigue just exasperates any of the symptoms that they might be experiencing from the sundowning. So, one thing you want to do is let it play out. Patients with dementia and Sundowning syndrome require managed care sometimes. Maybe they need to be in a secured assisted living, Alzheimer's assisted living, where they can be kept safe. And sometimes it's hard to make our homes as safe as they need to be for someone with memory loss. So I know none of us ever wants to place our loved one, but sometimes we have to think about that. This is an approach that I really like, and I have seen it work many times. It's called validate, reassure, and distract. So, when you're dealing with people suffering with any kind of memory loss, the process starts with the caregiver acknowledging that the person has the symptoms. So, whatever they are experiencing, you can say something like, I notice you look like you're feeling afraid or anxious right now. And it's okay to feel that way. So, you have validated the person, and then you've reassured them by saying it's okay to feel that way. And the next step is to distract them. So you may want to say, I notice that you're feeling really anxious and afraid right now. It's okay to feel that way. It's all part of the disease, or it's all part of the process. Then to say, hey, guess what? Your favorite show is on TV. Let's go watch it. Or I made your favorite dessert. Let's go have a snack. So you want to distract them from whatever state they're in at that moment and try to introduce something new to them. Validate, reassure, and distract. Those are good principles that will help with lots of different behaviors. So, even though you may not be able to stop sundowning completely, you can take steps to manage this challenging time of the day for both of you. It's really important to get good sleep. So if your loved one's up at night and they take a nap during the day, then you need to take a nap when they're taking a nap. Just like when our babies were little, we did that. So look for patterns. What I always say is look for what is going on just before the behavior starts. And sometimes you'll notice it's the person's hungry, they're tired, or some kind of sound or lighting may have triggered it. So try to pay attention to what happens just before the behavior, and then that way you may be able to avoid it the next time. Also, keep to a daily routine. You probably know that people with memory loss like a regular routine. Limit or avoid things that affect sleep. So don't let your loved one drink alcohol or smoke, and make sure that any sweets or caffeine they have is early in the morning and not later in the day. Also, having a big lunch and then keep their evening meal smaller might help with sleeping as well. So I hope these tips were helpful to you. I just want to remind you that Inland Caregiver Resource Center is here to help you with all your caregiving needs. We have 13 family caregiver support groups a month, and we also have 10 workshops a month. We're going to have one just right after this at 12:30 today called Is It Normal Aging or Dementia? And we have all different topics each month. And you don't have to be a client at Inland Caregiver Resource. Someone who can benefit from services that we offer, such as free caregiving in the home and family consultations with our master degree social workers. We have 16 family consultants that can help you, and they can develop a care plan for your loved one, connect you with other services, and all kinds of things, and everything is free. So give us a call at 800 675 6694. And until next week for Facebook Live, I'll see you. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.